the reconciliation. I want to ask about the Iran. I have been talking about I understand that the administration has made clear that you believe that the actions taken thus far fall under the president's Article 2 authority. I think reasonable people have disagreed about the boundaries of presidential war powers for a long time. But the war powers resolution is pretty clear here. It requires the president to terminate hostilities within 60 days, absent congressional authorization. I think it's important that we in Congress actually assert our own role and responsibility to this. That 60-day clock expired April 28th. And then on the 1st, the administration sent letters to congressional leaders asserting that the hostilities has ended. But I think where there is confusion is when the president says hostilities have ended, we still have 15,000 troops that are forward deployed, more than 20 warships in an active naval blockade. CENTCOM has redirected 61 commercial vessels, disabled tankers. In other words, it doesn't appear that hostilities have ended. And so the question to you is whether or not the administration has considered or had intended to seek an authorization of use of military force from the Congress.
Senator, our view is that should the president make the decision to recommence, that we would have all the authorities necessary to do so.
Do you think that it would be helpful to the president if it was made clear that in fact the Congress did provide an AUMF?
I think the president, our view is that he has all the authorities he needs under Article 2 to execute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, here's where we are. The vote is about over. The secretary has to get with the president on the China trip. I'm going to ask Senator Murkowski to wrap up. And thank you all for being here.
Baldwin, Shaheen, and Kennedy. Baldwin, Shaheen, and Kennedy still have questions. Wrap up after.
This guy is too old to be in a place of power. Mitch McConnell is too old.
Yeah,
so.
Obviously there's not a whole lot of time for a second round, so we'll get through everybody. And Senator Murkowski, I appreciate your taking over.
Thank you. Secretary Hegseth, Chairman Caine, thank you for being here today. Today is the first time either of you are appearing before this subcommittee since the abrupt choice was made to cancel the acquisition of the Constellation-class frigate, which was being built in Wisconsin. These ships were meant to provide vital capability to the Navy in the event of a future war against China. And they were certainly part of our calculus of deterrence through strength. Canceling this program placed thousands of jobs in Wisconsin at risk and left our fleet less prepared. You know, President Trump has talked a lot about making ships in America again, but I have to tell you, dramatic and misguided decisions like this pull the rug out from under our shipyards. The U.S. shipbuilding industry needs stability if we are ever going to compete with Chinese shipyards. Wisconsin workers who have decades of experience building world-class vessels that defend our nation, that serve commerce and provide transportation, they need stability as well. So I'd like to start with a question to you, Chairman Caine, on the medium landing ships. The Navy's new amphibious ships, which will now be built at the same Wisconsin shipyards working on we're working on the Constellation class less than a year ago. How important are medium landing ships to future U.S. operations in the event of a war with China?
Well, Senator, thanks for the question. And I do want to highlight, no matter what the policy decisions are, the great workers up there and in your state. And as the Joint Force considers the options that the medium landing ship would bring to the table in terms of assuring a mobility gap, in filling that gap and allowing us to project power at the Secretary and the President's choice in choosing. While not stepping into the Navy's boundaries and mindful that the CNO and SECNAV and acting SECNAV in this case will have views, I hope we'll carefully consider this capability and then, if appropriate, bring it forward to the Joint Force.
Well, unfortunately, the department included the request for funding the construction of 6 medium landing ships in that partisan part of the budget request, the reconciliation, which is in danger of potentially not even passing this year. To be frank, it does not give me confidence that we are taking this program seriously. What would the impact be if Congress did not appropriate funding for the medium landing ships in fiscal year 27? And are you comfortable with the pace that the Navy is planning on building them, Chairman Caine?
Well, I'll acknowledge that I think it was yesterday, the day before, that they released their shipbuilding plan. And given all the things that I'm juggling in this job that I'm so lucky to have, I've not gone and done a deep dive. So I'd like to come back to you.
Please do.
If you're okay with it on that matter, so that I don't wing it.
Yeah, thank you. I want to now turn to the war with Iran. Yesterday, I had a chance to meet with service members who were injured in the opening days of the war. They struggled to receive adequate and timely care for their injuries in the Middle East. And the fighting kept them from being quickly evacuated to Landstuhl after being injured. These service members have since been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury, but initially struggled to get properly evaluated or treated, in part because some of our military hospitals overseas and in the US did not have the capacity for them. They had to wait for more than 3 weeks to receive the treatment they needed. And it seems clear to me that our military medical system was not prepared to treat those injured in this war. Secretary Hegseth, did DOD review our military health system's readiness to treat those injured in a war with Iran? And did that impact your recommendation to begin Operation Epic Fury?
Well, the view of the department was always to, as expeditiously as possible, move anyone injured that needed further care to Europe for that care, with the recognition that, thankfully, 90% of those that have been injured in Epic Fury have returned to duty. So most of those injuries have been minor enough that they return, but we always catalog if there could be future complications to ensure that they get care in the future.
It seemed to me, from what I heard, that we weren't prepared in theater, we weren't prepared in Germany, and we weren't prepared immediately upon these soldiers' return to the U.S. Can you commit to ensuring that every service member, including my constituents, will receive necessary medical care after being injured in this war, and that the military health system is now prepared for any future casualties in this war?
We have been, and we will continue to be.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you both for being here, all three of you for being here. Since your testimony 2 weeks ago, Secretary Hegseth, before the Armed Services Committee, the department has sent over your legal review, which I appreciate, thank you, for use of security assistance funding for Ukraine. However, as was determined earlier in the testimony, funding still has not gone out the door. And I didn't hear you give a date when this committee or the Armed Services Committee can expect to hear or receive a spend plan for those dollars. General Caine, the day of the testimony, got back to us as he said he would and explained that he had coordinated on the spend plan on April 13th. So that's been almost a month. And we still haven't gotten anything. So when are we going to see the spend plan for Ukraine?
The spend plan for the European capacity building is in conjunction with
No.
EUCOM.
I'm asking for the spend plan that we are providing. Are you suggesting the Pearl funding is part of that spend plan? Did I understand?
The specific line
misunderstand
item
you?
was European capacity building in the budget.
I understand, but
And as a
the
result,
intent
We're
of
working with
Congress
to allocate it.
was to spend that 400 million. I think you heard from Chairman McConnell, you heard from Senator Coons. There was discussion at the time with the Congress that those dollars were intended to be used for Ukraine. And the reason it was designated as it was because what we heard from Speaker Johnson was that the president was going to veto the bill if Ukraine was mentioned in it anywhere in the bill. And so that's why the determination was to use the term European, but the clear intent was for that money to be spent for Ukraine. So again, when is the money going to go out the door? When is this committee going to get the spend plan?
Ma'am, we're expecting to see a final spend plan for that this week, and once we have it, we can provide it to Congress.
And who still has to review the spend plan? So General Caine's review isn't enough?
Well, ultimately, and he passed me a note on this earlier, European Command is going to take the lead on ensuring this
Oh,
gets
I know, but
deployed the
General
most effectively. So that's where
Brinkovich, as I pointed out 2 weeks ago,
It's-
had already reviewed the spend plan. So we're not waiting for him to do that, as I understand.
No, ma'am, I believe we are. I think UCOM is trying to make a few tweaks to the spend plan.
Okay, so when do we think we will get it?
I believe we'll have it to you this week.
Okay. And when do we expect money to go out the door once that spend plan is available?
I don't know what they're putting in the spend plan, so I can't tell you what the schedule will be for contracting. That will matter. What they choose to buy with that money will determine how fast it goes out the door.
Okay, if this committee doesn't come back to you, I can guarantee you the Armed Services Committee is going to come back to you and get an answer to that question. Secretary Hegseth, a number of members of Congress have expressed our concern that Iran is receiving intelligence support from Russia to target our service members, even as we loosen sanctions on the Kremlin. Russia's making $4 billion from oil sanctions relief because we've loosened those sanctions. As has been testified to, an Iranian Shahed drone costs about $35,000. That's enough money for hundreds of thousands of drones supporting Russia's war in Ukraine, and billions for Iran to reconstitute its industrial base. So if one of the goals that's been outlined by the president as part of this war is to destroy Iran's defense industrial base, don't you think we ought to be putting more pressure on Russia and putting those sanctions back on those Russian oil ships so that they are not continuing to fund Iran in this war?
Senator, we know Russia is a nefarious actor on a lot of levels and account for that, but I would say the destruction of
Well,
Iran's defense
but all-
industrial base has been highly
All
effective
evidence to
in
the
this effort.
contrary. We're not accounting for that if we're giving Russia the opportunity to earn $4 billion a month, $20 billion by the end of the year if we leave those sanctions lifted for that time,
Saying that
during which they can continue to fund Iran.
Well, the destruction
can
of defense
continue
of
to
Iran's
provide
defense
oil
industrial
to
base
China.
has been clear and overwhelming. The destruction of Iran's defense industrial base has been clear and overwhelming.
Well, it's certainly not clear to me as a member of the committee, because what we see is Iran still producing drones. They're still engaged in this conflict. We have not won this war.
There's a difference
despite
between
the rhetoric.
pulling a drone out of a cave that's been collapsed and producing more drones. That's a different thing.
Well, maybe so, but if Iran still has almost 50% of their missile capacity and the ability to pull drones out of caves and still injure our allies and U.S. service members, then we have not won the war.
We are told that Senator Kennedy should be here in mere minutes. And so Senator Coons, if you want to
Thank
ask
you,
a couple
Senator.
questions until he arrives.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Mr. Secretary, I'm just going to follow up on the questions I asked in my first round and the questions that had been asked by members of both parties. In my assessment, there was no imminent threat to the United States that justified the president using his Article 2 powers, and there was insufficient preparation to make sure that we had the right troops, the right capability deployed. There used to be a consensus in national security that America should only go to war when there's an imminent threat to our national security, when all other options have been exhausted, and when we have clear objectives and a plan for how it ends. As General Caine testified, the military was given 3 clear goals: sink the Navy, attack and destroy the ballistic missile launchers, and degrade their defense industrial base, and you've accomplished those. But President Trump celebrated regime change after saying that regime change was the real goal. And our NATO allies have delivered. They have allowed overflight. They have allowed projection of force despite not being consulted. You said just a few moments ago, Mr. Secretary, we control the strait. But it's clear that reopening the Strait of Hormuz for commercial traffic eludes us, in no small part because Iran retains a robust stockpile of cheap, lethal Shahed drones, and they are getting help from our adversaries in rebuilding them. What is your plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, Mr. Secretary?
I would just note that the majority of your question was highly disingenuous and loaded with suggestions that I very much don't agree with. From the beginning,
Please feel free, sir, to pick any one of those
from the
things.
beginning, we've been very clear about the military objectives and the
Yes.
underlying strategic objective, which is preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Take, for example, the fact that Iranians' conventional Navy, they had aircraft carriers with Shahed drones on them before this started. They had full-on destroyers and battleship capabilities, none of which they have anymore. And
Did the
their inability
Iranian
to-
Navy have aircraft carriers?
Iranian Navy had 3 drone aircraft carriers. The
Okay.
Iranian Navy
They
had
had
11
launch
submarines.
platforms for drones, sure.
They had 11 submarines.
And you've
They had
sunk
a
all of the
terror
regular Navy. Great, good.
They retain fast boat capabilities, which they've always had. We understand that, which we can control for and will. We've degraded almost completely their defense industrial base capabilities. The idea that they control anything, you can terrorize something, you can
Yes.
hold it at issue with piracy, as I've talked about at the Pentagon podium time and time again.
Correct.
That doesn't mean you control it. We control what goes in and out, and we control whether or not we have to restart conflict. The president does as well.
Mr.
So
Secretary.
we're the ones that will manage where this goes in the future, and they have very limited ability to set the tempo or respond to it. And that gives the president a lot of options to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
The connection between their ability to close the Strait of Hormuz using fast boats and Shahed drones and our strategic goal, shared broadly, to prevent them from ever having a usable nuclear weapon is utterly unclear to me. And my question was, what's the plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz to commercial traffic, given
Shared broadly, but
skyrocketing
never
prices?
executed. Shared broadly, but never executed because previous administration didn't have the willingness to actually do what it would take. And when Iran was at its weakest moments following the 12-day war, but still wanted the pursuit of a nuclear capability, President Trump made the courageous decision to go at their conventional umbrella and shield, which they were using to protect their nuclear program, which we knew came with threats and branches and sequels.
My
which we've
concern,
accounted
Mr.
for.
Secretary, is that you've achieved a series of tactical successes, but are on the verge of a strategic loss because we are now negotiating.
I just think it's so
a
foolish.
demand.
Here we are in a committee in the United States Senate, 74 days in, and you're talking about strategic loss. We have the ability to
74
defeat a
days in.
47-year threat of a pursuit of a nuclear weapon. We have more leverage than we've ever had. We've had incredible battlefield successes, and you're talking about a strategic loss?
Mr.
Cloaked in
Secretary.
disingenuous questions?
Mr. Secretary.
This is how you
Mr.
undercut
Secretary.
efforts that could otherwise and are otherwise
I am
being
not
very
your
effective.
enemy, sir. I am not your adversary. I share your goal of preventing Iran from ever having a usable nuclear weapon. To finish my sentence, control of the Strait of Hormuz, the ability to degrade our partners and allies' gas and oil production capabilities through cheap drones, the ability to harass and harry commercial shipping remains in Iran's hands. And their demands are that we recognize sovereignty for them over the Strait of Hormuz, which I believe our president's rejected, you've rejected, I reject. But my question remains, how do we reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping? If we control it, how do we reopen it? And your average American is seeing this at the gas pump every single day as the cost of gas continues to rise.
Senator Coons, I know that your question has not yet been responded to.
And it deserves an answer.
It does
But I
deserve
also
an
understand I'm
answer.
delaying my colleagues. But
But-
that's the question that deserves an answer, Mr. Secretary.
We do have Senator Kennedy followed by Senator Murphy, and I know that Secretary has a time departure.
Thank you for your indulgence,
thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, welcome. Can we agree that if you took President Xi Jinping and turned him upside down and shook him, that the African country of Mauritius would fall out of his pocket?
I don't know if we can, but I'd like to indulge you on that.
Well, let me try it another way. Mauritius is good friends with China, is it not?
I understand there's some level of a relationship there.
Yeah. Yeah, like they're BFFs or whatever the young people call it. Prime Minister Starmer wants to give Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, which has virtually no connection with the Chagos Islands, who will promptly give a spare key to Diego Garcia to China. Is that accurate?
What I would underscore is that Diego Garcia is a very strategic location, and having the ability to operate there for the United States military is going to be critically important
But
in the future.
Starmer wants to give it away, does he not?
As President Trump has stated, there's been some pretty bad deals made by the Brits as it pertains to Diego Garcia.
I'd like to
yes.
hear you. I mean, the president's been back and forth on this, and I've talked to him a lot. He is not going to agree to that, is he?
No, as the president has stated, it was a bad deal that was cut by the UK and Prime Minister Starmer as it pertains to Diego Garcia, as evidenced by limitations that our troops could face in how we use that island. Yes.
All right. I appreciate that. My understanding is that the classified information and unclassified, it's public, showed that our intelligence discovered that not that long ago, Iran had developed the supreme leader, now dead is fried chicken, but they have a new supreme leader, had developed a new game plan for their nuclear weapons program. And their game plan was to jack up missile, both ballistic and cruise missile production and drone production, and put together this huge stockpile of missiles and drones. At which point they would turn to the United States and Israel and the rest of the world and say, we're going to restart our nuclear weapons program. If you bomb us again, like you did in June, we will destroy the Middle East. And by the way, our missiles can now reach Berlin and London and Paris. Is that my understanding of one of the reasons, the main reason we went into Iran?
I think that's pretty well articulated, Senator, that they were trying to use the umbrella of their established conventional stockpiles to blackmail the rest of the world in pursuit of their own nuclear weapons.
Now let's
Yes.
talk about Iran today. Can we agree that Iran, both the public and the private sector, is being held together right now with spit and duct tape?
Spit and duct tape is not a doctrinal term, Senator, but I would agree with something along those
It's a
lines.
Louisiana term. I mean, 7 out of 10 Iranians are out of work. We bomb their infrastructure. They've got 70% inflation. Their internet's shut off. You know better than I do what we've done on the military side. Their launchers, gone. Their missiles, for the most part, gone. Their drones, gone. Do they have some left? Yeah. Their Navy, gone. Their Air Force, gone. You can get in an airplane, you personally, and fly anywhere you want to across Iran right now and feel safe because they don't have any air defenses. It will be, in my opinion, 20 years and cost $1 trillion before they're even back somewhat to normal. And I don't have the slightest idea where they're going to get the money. If they think China's going to give it to them or Russia, they've got to learn a hard lesson. To that extent, have we achieved our objective in Iran?
Objective, as this president has stated from the beginning, is to ensure they don't get a nuclear weapon, and President Trump remains dedicated to ensuring that happens. And everything you described with the military degradation of their country was in service of ensuring they never get a nuclear weapon.
This is what I never understood the president to say, I want a regime change in Iran, and I want to obtain all of their fissile material. I've never heard him say that. What I heard him say was, I don't want to go back through it, but our goal is to cripple them so they can't blackmail the rest of the world. Now, many of my Democratic friends are trying to say we have lost. Here's a footnote. You're not going to get Democratic support. They're not going to support you, Mr. Secretary, because they don't support President Trump. I know that's not a newsflash. But they say we've lost. I don't get it. I don't understand how we've lost. Is the strait closed? Yes. But if we continue that blockade where nothing's going in and nothing's going out, eventually they're going to have to shut down their oil fields, are they not? Half of their oil fields are low pressure. Once they put them down, they're not going to get them back up. Am I missing something here?
No, that's why the president is right when he says we hold all the cards, and we do. And we've got the best deal maker in the world able to make the best deal for the United States of America. And if we have to go back at it as the Department of War, we're ready to do that as well.
Well, keep two things in mind. You're not going to win over my Democratic friends. It's not worth getting your blood pressure up. Focus on other things. And number two, just keep this in mind. America first does not have to mean America alone. America first does not have to mean America alone. We need all the friends we can get. They need to carry their own weight. They need to pay their bills. But the more the better. I'm sorry I went way over, but I sure do appreciate
Senator
it.
Kennedy. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Let me give you a chance, Mr. Secretary, to answer Senator Coons' question, which is a really simple one. How are we going to get the strait open? Because nothing matters more to our constituents than doing something about these spiraling gas prices, which are bankrupting families and farmers all across the country. And maybe let me ask it this way. This is the first time you've come before this committee, but in other briefings, people that work for you have told us in plain terms that there is no military mechanism to reopen the strait, that ultimately it will be a political decision made by Iran. And I think you're confirming that here today by suggesting that it will be economic pressure that will create a political imperative inside Tehran to open the strait. So can you just confirm for the committee that there is not a military mechanism or means to reopen the strait, that ultimately we have to essentially use diplomacy, economic diplomacy in this case, in order to convince Iran to make the decision to reopen the strait?
I would say, Senator, there most certainly are military means by which we could open the strait, both on targets on land and also with what we do with our naval capabilities, not to mention our naval blockade.
Why haven't you done, if that's true, and that's not what has been testified to us in private briefings, why haven't you done that already?
Ultimately, a preferred long-term approach would be a deal where they open it up, where they stop being pirates of international waters and allow countries from all nations to flow. You know, these aren't U.S. ships that are being blockaded there. These are ships from all around the world, creating much more pressure for other countries than ours. So the bad guy here is Iran, who's closing the strait through piracy effectively, because they really only have fast boat capabilities. And we're blockading them. None of their stuff's getting out. They're feeling all the pressure.
Okay, here's my follow-up question. You don't worry that through a study of history, you might come to the conclusion that you are overestimating their willingness to cave based upon economic pressure. The Russians believed years ago that Ukraine would cave because of the economic pressure they were putting on Ukraine. We thought the North Vietnamese would cave because of the economic pressure we were putting on them. Your own intelligence estimates, as has been reported, suggest that, in fact, the Iranians are in a position to hold out for potentially years. This is a high-risk strategy to hope that this economic pressure will eventually cause them to voluntarily reopen the strait, when there's plenty of evidence from military history to show that countries that are being attacked or invaded or occupied are actually willing to put up with a whole lot of economic misery in order to preserve national pride.
well aware. We've looked at we understand all of those historical case studies, and it's not just economic pressure. There's military pressure, diplomatic pressure. We certainly have a lot more military pressure we can bring to bear if the president were to choose to do so. I think there are a lot of different dynamics that cards that the president can play, holding all of them to ensure even greater economic pressure or even greater military pressure in Iran. And they know that. And that's why the negotiations are serious and ongoing right now about giving up their nuclear capability, because they understand.
And the problem is time is not on our side here. I believe you are being way too optimistic in your assessment of their potential to cave. But if this goes on for another 30 days, there are going to be thousands more farms that will go bankrupt. There are going to be families that are going to be ruined. And so time is not on our side. And I just don't believe that Iran is ready to capitulate yet. And if they capitulate in a year, there's going to be a whole lot of families and businesses that are ruined in the United States. General Caine, let me finally ask you a question about what seems to be a difference of opinion between the intelligence services that you rely on and the public statements of the President of the United States with respect to our war objectives. The Secretary and others in the President's cabinet have said very clearly that our war objective is to destroy Iran's missile and drone program. The president said just a week ago that Iran maybe had 18 to 19% of their missile capacity left. But there is public reporting suggesting that our intelligence agencies say that Iran still has 70% of their missile and drone capability, which would be a failure of our objectives if that were to be true. What can you tell us about the number of missiles and drones that they have left? And do you dispute that intelligence estimate?
Sir, I'm not going to comment, with deep respect for the question, I'm not going to comment in this forum on what may or may not have been opined on by the IC, which would suggest a leak or a confirmation of any intel. So while I appreciate the question, I hope you'll also appreciate my not answering it.
Well, then just give me the president said that 80% of.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on BDA on either way, sir.
Well, then how do we or the American public assess the success of the mission when you've stated publicly the purpose of the mission is to destroy their missile and drone capability? How do we assess whether we should continue funding this if you can't state?
Well, I'm not going to answer what you guys in the Congress considers the decision criteria around continued funding or not. What I know is that I've not read the report that you're talking about. All of our battle damage assessment matters are classified, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment in this forum on that. And I appreciate the question, but I'm not going to answer it.
Let me just put it to Secretary Hegseth. The president said that 80% of their missile capacity had been destroyed. This public report says it's only 30%. Can you give us an answer as to what the real number is?
I mean, I would answer the same way as the chairman.
Not talking to this committee about the damage assessment.
Not validating leaked information that could be wrong or not wrong. Why would I validate what people may leak or not leak? This is not a classified setting. We don't talk about those things. And we like to talk about them on TV. We don't talk about them here.
I would perhaps suggest that that some of these questions and responses are perhaps best in a classified setting. But I also acknowledge that we are not in a classified setting. We have held the secretary and the chairman longer than I think they had anticipated. Senators have 1 week to submit additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We request for a response from our witnesses within 30 days of receiving these questions. The subcommittee stands in recess subject to the call of the chair, and I would ask those in the audience to remain in their seats until Secretary and General Caine depart. And safe travels to you to China. Good luck.
Well, there you go, folks. That about wraps it up there. As you see, the Senate is convening. I don't know how you lean towards what you heard here today about Pete Hegseth, but it seems to me it was just standard. Just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. I think there were some softball questions that they should have dwelled on a little bit deeper without going into any classified information. Also, let me go back to the turtle, as they call him. He's much too old to be running this country. And that's the problem with a lot of what's going on right now. Those folks that we see up in these Senate committees and in the House of Representatives, they're too old. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but we all have grandparents and we all have seen black people around us that are growing old. And we know right now that Mitch McConnell is not in any state of mind to be running this country. He thought the committee was over with 30, 40 minutes ago. So you can come in here, agree or disagree with what we saw, but the bottom line is, it's like this. They say that the United States of America didn't go to war with Iran. Well, what do we call what we're at right now? They say that Iran is not in control of the Straits of Hormuz. Yes, they are.
Is it? Like, what was the statute?
There was always a flow of traffic in and out of the strait before Trump decided to declare war on another sovereign nation.
It was bizarre.
There's a lot more to this than just oil. You heard one of the senators say something about the infrastructure. Go up under the straits and find all those fiber optic cables.
Specifically in representing survivors over the last
Okay,
30 years now.
don't find all of those.
It affects not just the survivor.
And see how much more strategic the straits really are. It's more than about oil, folks.
Their mental stability and ability
Smoke and mirrors.
to maintain employment.
That's what it is. Let's get them to talk about one thing while we're doing something else. Say what you want to. I don't think Pete Hegseth was very honest, as normal.
So they've got to seek.
Thank you for stopping in, Ms. J. One Sphere, for all of those that dropped in. Chaos Rain, I saw you in earlier. Thank y'all very much. As they come back with some more, or next tomorrow, or whenever they hold another live Senate hearing. And if I'm able to broadcast it live, I will. Until then, folks, watch your 3, y'all 6, y'all 9. Be safe out there.
We're all doing this week to talk about getting the messaging out. Advocacy is expensive.
Look, all you motherfuckers been snitching for him and shit. Well, now you standing up in here, goddamn it, talking about preaching preacher. Fuck that nigga. Fuck that. I'm gonna shoot your ass too, motherfucker. Keep on. You gonna get shot too, nigga. You gonna get shot. God bless the fool, goddamn it. God bless the fool. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all something. I'm gonna end this goddamn thing. Look, where's that goddamn money bowl at? Who got that money bowl? We're taking that money right now before you leave this bitch. We ain't leaving out here for free, motherfucker. Yeah. Y'all know the motherfucker ain't no good. You want, look.